Hey, good morning, everybody. I'm Rita Hickman, body mind expert, shiatsu massage therapist, and I help women who are in narcissistic and toxic relationships. I help them walk away or stay or figure things out or whatever they need to do. I create a healthy space, a healthy supportive space for women to really move forward with their lives. So I'm glad you're here. Today's topic is about how narcissist abuse can change your DNA. So, I'm a body worker. I'm a shiatsu massage therapist, and what that means is that I use Asian medicine to help women heal, and I do it through touch. I do it through the body. I do it through how the body works. I do it through acupressure points and the nervous system. And so some Asian medicine practitioners, they go the route of herbalism or they go the route of acupuncture, and I went the route of massage therapy, of body work. Totally fits me like a T because I've got a real good intuitive connection with the nervous system. So this stuff has always, always, always fascinated me. You know, how environmental situations or internal situations affect us physically, right? So I first got into this with an author named Candace Pert, who has since passed, but she was one of the pioneers in the molecules of emotion, in how our emotions aren't just this ephemeral stuff that's wiggly and people are making up, but emotions are actual chemical releases in your body that create a whole cascade of responses, a whole, there's a whole thing going on whenever you have emotion. And not just any emotion, but different emotions. Every emotion has a different effect on the system. And so for me, at least, emotions have always been extremely physical. They haven't been in my head. They've been things that I've felt. It's a felt sense. So I dove into Candace Pert, and one of the things that she really worked with was how different emotions affect our DNA. So this is how it works. When your nervous system gets triggered by something because it recognizes something that's dangerous and familiar, it tells your body to release an emotion chemical. Now, this chemical, whether it's adrenaline or whether it's beta endorphins or dopamine or whatever it may be, this chemical it vibrates at a certain wavelength, just like everything does. You know how light waves, it's a wave. It's a wave of energy, and it's measurable. Same thing with sound waves. Same thing with the waves coming off of the emotion chemicals that are going through us. Now, why does that matter? How does that work with anything? Because in order for that little emotion molecule to find the right cell, a cell has a cell receptor. It looks like a little lily pad with a root that goes all the way down to the middle of the DNA of the cell. And every different type of emotion has its own type of cell receptor. So for every emotion, there's its unique cell receptor, and it only fits in with that emotion. It doesn't fit in with anything else. And the more you have of an emotion, the more cell receptors for that you'll have. But then the more flooded you are, let's say you're overwhelmed, your body eventually wears down and it stops making cell receptors for that. And this is how we can really affect the amount of emotion that we have, or how sensitive we are, because our body is always adjusting. It's saying, oh, you've got too much of this, we're out of balance, let's cut back on these cell receptors. Oh, you need more, you're not getting enough, well, let's try to grow some more. Your body will adapt to what it needs. It will adapt to it. So here's this little emotion molecule vibrating, right? And here's this little lily pad. And this lily pad on top of the cell, it flutters. It opens and closes, and it flutters. And this fluttering creates its own little wavelength. Now, have you ever watched sci-fi movies? And, here's this spaceship, and here's this other spaceship, and the big spaceship puts out a tractor beam, and the tractor beam grabs the other spaceship and brings it into it. That's really kind of how emotions and cell receptors and cells work, because here's this cell receptor that's fluttering, and here's this cell that's vibrating, this emotion chemical that's vibrating, and they sort of track or beam each other in. They entrain. They're vibrating at the same rate. It's measurable, definitely feet from the body, if not farther. And just like clocks and training to each other, grandfather clocks with the pendulum, or women's cycle every month. This is the same thing. The two wavelengths are like aha, and they entrain to each other, and it draws the emotion chemical closer. So the cool thing is this emotion chemical, it fits into the cell receptor like a lock, like a key into a lock, and it goes in, and there's this crazy little locking mechanism. So it's in there, and then when it locks, it sends a signal down to the middle of the cell into the nucleus, down by the DNA. And that emotion tells your DNA to either turn on certain genes or turn off certain genes. And they've discovered when you're in a high level of anger or hurt, or what we would typically call negative emotions, it can encourage DNA problems, DNA diseases. Because if enough of it happens, it switches the flip, it flips the switch in the DNA for different things. The wide variety of whatever your DNA holds. Some switches will be turned on and some switches will be turned off. And I thought this whole thing was really cool, right? I thought, wow, this is really neat. And then I was reading about this was many years ago. They did a lot of research on Holocaust survivors, and how Holocaust survivors, the amount of stress and trauma that they went through, that, of course, as we know now, affected their DNA. And that DNA, then, if they had children, got passed down generation to generation. It was the new DNA that was passed down. So when you're going through emotional trauma, and trauma is anything that's unexpected, you feel helpless about, and you're not able to process through. So whenever you hold on to or have trauma, those emotions affect your DNA, especially if it's constant and consistent, day after day after day after day, or week after week, where your body's being bombarded by these emotions that you're releasing because you're being triggered from things which are unresolved. And what it does is it keys in, and then it changes the DNA, and then you start having more problems. You start having more genetically designed diseases because of the trauma. I see it a lot, actually, with many people who in their DNA it will say that they've got these certain markers or these certain problems, and some people have a problem with it and some people don't. Typically, the ones who have more trauma, or who had childhood trauma, or who have a lineage or a history of trauma, they're the ones who will struggle with it. They're the ones where it will flare up, it will come to the surface. Whereas for other people, when you're able to stay in a healthy mindset and an emotional environment, a healthy emotional environment, then those switches don't get flipped. So we end up with people who are under constant stress. You find that they start having more and more and more problems, not just because their immune system is suppressed because they're in a state of fight or flight, but because now their DNA is being pushed and bombarded every day or very frequently, until those latent genetic problems come to the surface, because now they're being triggered too. So how do you reverse this? Well, the way to reverse it is to create an external and an internal environment that's good for you. So this stuff is reversible. A lot of people think it isn't, that, once you have a problem, you have it for forever. But the neat thing about the body, as we've learned, is that it is so malleable and so adaptable. It's always regenerating itself. Our brain's always regenerating itself. Everything is. The only thing that keeps us stuck in problems is our patterns, not just our patterns of how we behave, but our patterns of how we feel inside of ourselves. So when you start getting help, when you start reaching out, when you start getting new information, when you start getting support and love and care, and you're listened to, you're able to reverse a lot of these problems. So maybe you identified yourself as someone who's always sick many years ago, but when you give yourself a safe space and a safe community and good information, and You work on your old emotions and the things held in your body. When you start your healing journey, when you do that, your body actually heals itself. You know, I'm comfortable calling myself a healer, and not everybody would, who are in these professions would call themselves a healer. But I'm comfortable calling myself that because what I do is I support the body's natural healing process. I support how the body heals itself, which is completely miraculous. It's amazing how the body can heal itself when it gets what it needs, when it gets the support physically, mentally, and emotionally, nutritionally, with movement, and emotionally, all of it. Your body starts to heal itself. It starts to reverse the problems that were probably caused by stress, caused by overwhelm, caused by difficult situations, caused by toxicity from emotions and from, our body not detoxing itself because it's in that constant state of fight or flight. You know, Being in fight or flight can last decades. It really can. And you're there because you're in a state of reaction a lot and just sort of coping with moment to moment, day by day. When you do that, your body's in fight or flight. And when you're in that fight or flight for a period of time, then it tells your body that you're sick and you get sick. But when you start creating an environment for yourself and getting healthy relationships, and you start being in a healthier space, this stuff will reverse. Your body will go in and it'll say, oh, now this is what you need. You need a healthy body. We can do that. We can fix that. And when you get what you need, things heal. So, no matter what situation you're in, no matter how difficult it is, no matter how challenging it is, when you get the support step by step, piece by piece, your body will heal and your DNA will revert back to a healthier DNA, not one that where all of your latent issues are coming out and physically affecting you. Okay. So if you're ready to start changing, we do a wonderful group every Tuesday. I'd love for you to join. I've got a free library that's searchable of these narcissism live streams, and I work with women one-on-one coaching. Um, so many times people will do all three. They'll have the live streams, they'll search for stuff and they need it in the middle of the night or on a Sunday. They will be at the group every week, and we do monthly masterminds where as a community we come together and support one person at a time. And then they'll also do coaching with me, either weekly or bi-weekly or monthly, to give that extra deeper support. And when you do that, when you actually combine all three, um, things start to change and things start to heal, because those are the basics of what you need. You need to think differently, and you need to do different things. And how do you think differently? You spend time with people who think differently. You start feeding your head with different messages, not the narcissist messages, not the toxic messages. You start feeding your mind with the positive messages. You start surrounding yourself with other women who've been right where you're at and have struggled with the same sorts of things. And you get that community, that beautiful, positive community support. Um, and then you get some deeper help that lets you really dive into some of the things that have held you back. And we work you through it. We help you shift and change and evolve, and not just change your thinking, but change your body. So, if you're feeling stuck, if you're worried about your DNA, if you're starting to get sick and you need some help, reach out, because there's lots of help out there and it's very, very effective. Okay. So, I'll talk to you later, and I hope you have a great rest of your day. Bye.